Hello juniors, and welcome back to programming. For this video, we're going to be going over variables and how we actually use them in Python. So we've learned the conceptual design of what variables are and how they work. So now we're going to actually use the syntax for them in Python. So let's open the clips, and what you're going to do is make a new project called variables. I already have one, but all you have to do is File, New, PyDev project, and just name it variables. Then you can click finish, and if you haven't already configured your interpreter, make sure to click this and open the interpreters. Make sure you have one. If it doesn't work or it says it's not working, sometimes it'll have a little X over in the projects. You can just remove it and configure the first one in path. So you just click this, and then you make sure to click apply so that it'll apply. But it shouldn't automatically be set up, or there should be a link to help you set it up for the first time. Then once we have our project, you're going to download the variables outline.py that's on Canvas, and you can go along that with us. For me, I'm going to make a new module called practice. And you'll see it pop up in my project folder, and it'll generate that auto comment. So first, let's talk about the structure of variables. So let's go down. So in the variables, you have three parts. There's the name of the variable, there's an equal sign, and then there's the data. Now, there's different types of data, and there's different names for all the variables. So you have to name the variable, put an equal sign, and then put the data that you want there. We use this so that we can store data and then access it later by using the same name. Now, the variable names follows a couple of rules. They should start with a letter. They should follow camel casing. So camel casing is just when you have multiple words combined together. You always capitalize the first letter of every word. Var, data, variable. So if I was naming, this is a horrible name for a variable, but if I was to name it that, every first letter of the word of each word is capitalized. So if I had a variable with my name in it, I could do Michael name, and that's how it could be. You'll typically notice that I don't capitalize the first letter. In camel casing you do. I just don't do that because that's how I write variables. So that's a personal choice for the first letter, but the first character does have to be a letter. They can have numbers, but it's not preferred. Normally you'll see me do it in examples like this, then it's okay. But in actual programming, it's probably safer to write out var2 or something like that. They can be any length, but you want to keep them as short as possible because the whole point is making it easy to access. And they can't be the same as any Python keywords. So those are like, there's print, because there's a function named print. There's true, which is a data type. There's false, which is another data type. Notice that there's a capital on it. So now that we've talked a little bit about this, let's go through some examples. So there's a lot of different types of variables that I said because there's different types of data. So the first data there is integer data. And so that's a type of variable where it's just storing integers, so numbers, whole numbers, so not decimals. And that makes an integer. So like a equals 5, a equals 4. Those are all integer variables. The next type of data we have is float. So with floats, they're just like integers. They store numbers, except their numbers hold decimals. So 3.45. That is a float variable. We know because its data has a decimal in it, because it's a number with a decimal. We can do another one. We can do 2.1. Those are all floats. and it can be any length on either side. It's just like decimals in real life. The next type of data we have is string. So with string data, it's a string of text. So A equals string. So you have to put these quotes around it so that Python knows that it's a string of characters. So if I want to make a variable called name, I could be like name equals Michael. And now that's a string variable that stores my name. So it's kind of weird. They could have made it called text or something, but they called it string because they think of it as a string of characters, because you can also put spaces here. So Michael and Chucky. So spaces are just characters, just like all the special characters at the top. Those can all be placed in here as well. The next type of data we have is Boolean. For Boolean data, it's either true or false. So true, and notice that the true turns red because it's a keyword, as well as false. So we have integers, and you can tell their data because it's blue. And this is just how it shows up on my Eclipse. If you chose a different theme than me, you can always choose your appearance in the themes or in the preferences. You can go down to themes and change it. But in mine, data or integer data and float data, numbers, they come up in blue. Strings come up in green. And Boolean, like the true and false, comes up in red. So you can kind of use the colors that Eclipse gives you to remember what type of data is stored where, just at a quick glance. The last type of data we have, or the last type of variable we have, is list. And so this stores a list of information. So you start the list with a bracket, and then you put whatever data you want inside. Separate each data point by comma, and then you put a closing bracket. You can store any of the previous types of data in here. So we can do strings, string 1, string 2. We can store Booleans, true, false, true. And we can even store floats. So in total, we have 5 types of variables, 5 types of data. We have integer, float, string, Boolean, and list. So those are all the different types of variables that we're going to have you make throughout this course. Now let's talk a little bit about manipulating data. So when you're working with variables, there's certain ways that they operate. So for example, I'm going to make a variable called var a, and I'm going to set it to 1. This variable, sorry, let me make more space. This variable is different from this variable because var a equals 1, var lowercase a equals 2. And these are 2 different variables. So you got to think when you're naming your variables or when you're using them later, if I want to use this one, so what I was talking about earlier, the print function just works by you put data inside of here. So you can put either string data or you can put variables. So if I print var a and I run this program, every time we run it, we got to go to the drop down, run as, Python run, and it'll print 1 because var a is 1. But notice var a, lowercase a, and we run it again, it prints 2 because that's 2 different, because that's 2 different variables. So capitalization matters in every single variable that you have. Additionally, notice how I kept using a the whole time. If I print out a at the end, let's run this. It prints out the last list we made because every single time you set a variable, you're changing what's inside it. You're overwriting what's inside it. So a equals 5, it did equal 5, but then once we did this line, it got rid of the 5 data and put in the 4. And then it did the same with this, all the way down until this was the last time we changed the data inside of A. And then so it printed out that. Now if I put a print statement after every single one of these, it would print out all that individual data, but I'm not going to do that. Just know that over time you change data, and as you're manipulating it, it'll change and you can overwrite it. So when you're talking about types of data, you can change a variable's type just by setting it. So var a equals 4, it is now an integer variable, it's an int variable. But if I just go like var equals string, now it's a string variable. That's all that matters. Like as soon as I type this line, it has now changed to a string variable. It was an int variable and now it's a string one. Additionally, you can set one variable to another one. So I can make var 2 and I can set it equal to var. And now that we know that var equals string. So if we print out var 2, it should run and print string. Notice that it does not print the parentheses or the quotations, because it doesn't, when you're talking about string variables or string data, it does not print that. Whereas with lists, it'll print the brackets. It prints the whole list. So the cool thing about lists is that you can have a lot of data stored within it. You can even have variables stored within a list. So you could put b equals, and it can be different types. I could put a, which we know is a list from up there. I can put var capital A, which is 1, and I could put var, which we know is string. And that's a list of 3 variables, but the data is, it's a list of a list of a integer, and a list of a string. So you can kind of mix that around. But let's say I make this list and I just make it string. So I make A, B, C. How do I access? Because when I print the whole list, it prints out everything, all the characters inside, all the strings, all the 3 strings. What if I just want to access one data? Like I want to access one of those data points. All you have to do is print list, and then you put brackets after the list and you tell it what item you want to access. So lists start with indexes. So the first item in a list is 0. So A equals 0, B equals 1, and C equals 2. So notice the list has 3 items, but the last item in the list is going to be 2, because it starts at 0 because of indexes. So if I put print list at 0, it prints A, because that's what it is. And you can also set variables to stuff. So if I make a list var, so this is a separate variable, and I set it to list at 0, and then I print out list var, we get the same thing, A and A, because it prints out. So all this does is accesses that one item from within the list. Note that you can do the same thing with strings. So if I make a string of my name, strings also have indexes. So if I print out the first index of the string, which is 0, and I run this, it's going to print M for Michael, because that's the first item, the first letter in the string. And then the last thing I want to make sure that you understand is this print statement. So the print works by you put whatever you want to print out to the console in the print statement. So you can print data just like that. So I can print that 5, I can print string, I can print true, I can print lists. So you can also print the variables. You can print a string, that's my string variable from on line 64, and it'll print all those things. If I run this, it prints 5, string, true, the whole list, Michael. And we'll be going over further stuff of how you can use it later. But for right now, in your drills, you're just going to be printing out the variables that you create. So you'll make a variable and then you have to print out that variable. The next thing I want to cover with variables is errors. So sometimes we get things wrong while programming. This is called an error or a bug. There are 2 types of errors. Let me write this down in a comment. There's 2 types of errors. There's syntax errors and then there's logical errors. So syntax errors means that there's a problem with the syntax. And the syntax is just the arrangement of words and phrases to create sentences in a language. So programming is a language, but the sentences don't look like sentences to us. It's sentences for the computer. So when we write a sentence in English, we need a subject and a predicate. And the predicate is just something about the subject. So you would say, the dog is nice. The dog is the subject, is nice is the predicate. When we're talking about making variables, we need a name, an equal sign, and the data. So we have a name, an equal sign, and the data. Var equals 4. Var being the name, equal sign being the equal sign, and 4 being the data. So when we say there's a syntax error, that means we created our sentence wrong. It means that one of these 3 pieces are missing. Now, for variables, it's really simple to find the syntax errors. But for like other pieces, like when we get into more complex programming, it's going to be harder to notice those syntax errors. So we're starting teaching you these errors right from the beginning so that you can understand it. So here are just some common syntax errors. A, you forget the name. Look, it doesn't have the name for the variable, and it'll when you put these syntax errors, Eclipse can notice it and it'll throw this area and this error, and sometimes it doesn't really make sense, like you don't know what all of this means, but it knows that something's wrong, so you can normally figure it out by looking at it. The other common syntax error is you can add something that's not supposed to be there. So sometimes people will put 2 equal signs. That's not how you do it. It throws this error because 2 equal signs is actually a whole different thing. It's comparing these 2 things instead of setting it. So it's important to always remember only use 1 equal sign. Or sometimes you put the sentence out of order. So 4 equals var. These are all like common errors that I've seen throughout teaching programming. So it's just things to watch out for when you're doing this. So now let's talk about the other type of error. When we talked about syntax, let's talk about logical. Logical errors mean that there's a problem with the program's logic. This is kind of like when the story doesn't make sense. So Michael needs groceries. Michael eats his groceries. Now we can assume in the middle that Michael went to the store, picked up groceries, and then cooked them. But a computer won't be able to fill in those holes because a computer isn't good at that. So a logical error is when there's holes in the logic of the program. So to fix the grocery problem, instead of saying Michael needs groceries, Michael eats his groceries, instead, for a computer, we would say Michael needs groceries, Michael writes a list, Michael travels to the grocery store, Michael buys groceries, Michael takes them home, Michael cooks the groceries, and Michael eats his groceries. With programming, we need to be very specific for the computer. So we need to explain each part so that the logic is all there for the computer. So common variable logic errors is like trying to print a variable or use it before you make it. So let's say I wanted to set var to var3. That's pretty normal. We're creating this variable var. Oh, but there's a problem. var3 doesn't exist. It's an undefined variable. So that's the error, is we just forgot to define the variable before using it. So all we have to do is go back and add the variable, and now the error should go away once it recognizes that var3 actually exists. This can also happen with like printing. So if you try to print a variable that doesn't exist, and if you run it, it'll throw this big area because variable name Michael doesn't exist. All we have to do to fix it is add a variable. And then boom, you run it and it'll print out that variable. Another type of error is using the wrong variable. So let's say we make a variable called names and put Michael in it, but then we try to print out name. Now we've actually made name previous times, so let's change this example. Let's change it to titles. And then you can mess up by using title, and title isn't a variable, but titles is. So small syntax errors like that, accidentally capitalizing, and then look, now it doesn't exist because it's another undefined variable. So those are common logical errors where you try to use the variable or you use the wrong variable. That's typically how it goes. So now going over what you have to do, remember to turn in your outline. You should have been going along with that with this video to be able to complete it. If not, you can go and download it now and go through the video again. After you finish your outline or submit it, make sure to go onto Canvas and download the drills. So here's the outline, here's the drills. Make sure to download the drills and you're going to go through it and actually complete all of the items. So I'm just going to give you a little bit of a sneak peek to it. You're going to download it, put it into your project folder, and you'll just go through and do what it says. So make a variable called var1 and set it to 5 and then print the variable. So you're just practicing doing that. Next, after you complete your drills, you go to the debug variable drills and you can download this and also put it into your PyDev project on Eclipse. In these, you're going to be focusing on the problems with the variables. So syntax or logical areas only with variables. So what we've done is we have this function here. This function has a comment that tells you what the function does. Then it's got the function itself. So any lines that don't make sense to you, like this line right here, or this line right here, or this line right here, that have some weird syntax that you've never seen before, you don't have to worry about those. You only have to worry about errors with the syntax of the variables. So right here, this is a variable, this is a variable, this is a variable. So there may be a syntax error with how you do it. And so I know in volume calculator, there's four errors throughout this. So there's 4 lines that you have to fix. As well as shipping and tax, there's 3, and so on and so forth. So only pay attention, I'm just going to reiterate this one more time, to the errors associated with variables. There's no errors on this line, there's no errors on this line or this line. Just focus on the stuff that we talked about in this video. Use the common errors that we talked about to search these functions and find them. And use the function descriptions to check for logical errors, because this will tell you what the function was supposed to do, and if it's not doing that, then you know that there's a logical error and you can break it down and find out what that is. As always, if you have any other questions, you can always reach out to me, but otherwise I will see you later.